And we'll start off, there's no apologies because I see all four councillors are here. Are there any declarations of interest?
Good morning all. No, nothing has been received in advance, so I just check if anybody has any declarations to make.
Okay, no, none at all. Anybody got declarations? No. Okay, thank you for that.
Thanks.
The good news, well, I would like to highlight on Wednesday, the 24th of April, was the inaugural meeting of the Nairn Common Good Stakeholder Engagement Group, which was brought in people from a cross-section of Nairn society, many with very detailed knowledge of the common good, officers, and it's part of the quarterly meeting for a one-year pilot, which hopefully at the end of this will give people greater engagement with the common good and provide a forum to discuss issues. So I thought it was for an initial meeting with a heated first half where we decided on procedure protocol to the second half, which was more about specific issues, which I thought was beneficial. And at the end of it, there was very many positive comments. So delighted that that's underway. And if there's any comments from anybody else, I'd be delighted to hear them. No. Okay, that's fine. Thank you for that.
Sorry, 2 seconds.
Sorry, Councillor Jarvie, my apologies.
For good news, fabulous taste in Nairn Street Market. Credit to Bid at the weekend, and also credit to the Community and Arts Centre for hosting so much of the event. It was really good. And I would also like to make a mention about Mike Davis. This news just came up after the last one, who club chairman of the Nairn County Cricket Club, played in India at the over 60s World Cup on the rest of the world team, which was absolutely fantastic. So well done to Mike Davis, our local hero.
Okay, did they win?
Yes, he got the cup. I would just like to. Sorry, it's gone.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jarvie, for that. My apologies for not coming to you sooner. Okay. We'll now move on to the Housing Performance Report. And is there any comment everybody wishes to make on the housing report? I'm sure there is from Councillor Fraser, Provost Fraser, who's the Vice Chair of Housing. So I'm sure you've got some comments you wish to make, Councillor Fraser.
Actually, no, it's just a reasonable report in most aspects. The only thing that did give me sort of concern was the amount of rent arrears. It seems to have gone up significantly, but that's probably a legacy from COVID that we're going to have to struggle with. But we are using all means to get this the arrears down, and we don't necessarily use evictions as a final course of action. We've done very few since COVID, and we just I'm hoping the officials are just going to carry on trying to get the arrears down. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Jarvie.
Thank you for the figures, and just a note of the homeless presentations. You've got there 16. It seems to be going on an upward trajectory again. And can I just make it clear that that's actual households rather than people? So we actually have more than 16 people that are actually homeless in there, which is quite sad to see. I think it just flags up the need for housing in Nairn. And could you tell me, is it family houses or single properties that are most needy? Jake.
Morning, members. Yes, in terms of demographic, a single person is the more common homeless household. But we absolutely, as you pointed out, have need for family homes as well. So it's not just single people. But yeah, I mean, 16 it appears quite high on the graph within the report. Probably exaggerated slightly by quite a low Q3, I suppose, which was just down at 6, which is really low. But yeah, accommodation is the challenge. And just on Councillor Fraser's point, absolutely, there's a bit of a COVID hangover, I think, in terms of rent arrears. The trend is down slightly, which is good, but still a lot of work to be done. And it's getting back to business as normal, really. The cost of living legislation, the restrictions there, that was relaxed just at the end of the financial year. So that allows us, where we need to, take sort of more formal action at an earlier level. But yeah, as you alluded to, Councillor Fraser, that's a last resort and not something that we're striving to do.
Okay, that's fine, Jake. Thank you. Paul?
Nothing, thank you, Councillor.
Okay. No, Jake, thank you for a first class paper. That was good. And I would just reiterate what you said, that the rent arrears are actually coming down. They're something like 10% lower Q4 than they were last year. So, which is remarkable given the current backdrop. So all credit for a good report, Jake. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on now, guys, and we'll move on to, I'll bring it up. Item 5, which is the school group overview. I think, Fiona, you're taking the lead here, but Fiona, I've got a couple of things to say about this report. I was quite disappointed on this report, actually. For a lay person to be looking at this, there was no descriptions given for a lot of these acronyms, ELC, LA, nobody, we know what they are, but folk who are looking at this, members of the public.
You're freezing, Michael.
Okay, which is just as well, probably, but no, I'm just saying that there's no understanding or description of what these acronyms mean, which would have helped members of the public read the report. As I say, they don't know what an ELC or an LA is, so it's just to say from going forward. Also, there was no author to this report, which I felt was rather disappointing. If you go to the end of it, it was left blank, if you see there.
Oh, that's just an error. Apologies. That should just have my name in it because it's got area education and learning manager. So that's me.
Okay.
But the
Right,
report,
okay, so that's
these report formats were agreed some time ago, but I'll pass that comment on about the acronyms and the explanations for it.
It's just to make it more Fiona, it's just to make it more comprehensible.
Absolutely fine. Yep. No, that makes sense. And apologies, it should have had my name at the bottom. That's an oversight.
No. Right, I'll open up and then I'll come back to myself for 1 or 2 comments. So, Councillor Oldham, we'll go to you first.
Actually, I've got nothing, Michael. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Jarvie.
Oh, okay. Thanks for the report, Fiona. Absolutely fantastic, outstanding report at Codder School. So good to hear. I'd like to know, and it was nice to have Rosebank School at one of our ward meetings. It'd be nice to have the other teachers as well. At some time that's convenient. It's great to get feedback there. Do you have a system where your local primary schools meet up on a basis to do shared learning amongst the teachers, just to share what's how Codder's getting the very good across the board and all Durham's getting good, some very good, and just to get everyone up to that bar. It's been attained in one school. It'd be great to have it across the rest. I understand you're well aware that Codder, the condition of the school is a lot more pleasant environmentally than some of the other schools, but just to do a shared learning experience would be great, and role model ideas that go out there. The attendance and absence. Oh, I'm trying to think, where are we? There was actually an article in the P&J about Highlands at school attendance isn't great. I'd like to know what system we have for tracking kids in their absence, how quick it is flagged up within that day. Is it immediate? And according to what's the reasons for local absence, as it's been reflected in the newspaper this morning, that a lot of it is actually illness, which is quite concerning, because on another vein, we are still awaiting reports back with vaccine levels, and particularly concerned about children missing out on vaccines at the key stages throughout school. So kind of bothered that there's a connection there. So I'll be raising that up in healthcare places also.
Okay.
And yes, I agree with Michael about that. If there was just a little key, you know, with ASG, what it means, ELC, all that stuff, that would be handy for people viewing this. And the exclusions, people need to not look at a school negatively if they have exclusions against their system. It can actually be a good thing, because it just allows a chill out time for everyone to have an overview of a situation and get support for the child, the family, the class, the teacher. And it can move things along like assessments and stuff. It can be a good tool to use at key sort of fractious times. You know, it can be a benefit. It should not be viewed on negatively.
Okay.
Okay, I'll let Fiona answer those. Thanks, Babs.
Thank you, Councillor Jarvie. So, where am I? So, yes, in terms of the times for staff to meet up, that's already happening within the Nairn ASG. They're quite a tight associated schools group. The head teachers meet regularly, and they do have planned collegiate time for their staff. I believe it's already taken place across the schools, you know, on an in-service day or in their collegiate time. They do meet up looking at literacy and numeracy. I would need to get the specifics from the head teachers, but I am aware that those meetings have taken place and there's been opportunities for staff to share learning and to share practice. So that is good practice across the schools, and the Nairn schools are really very good at working closely together to do that. So that, I would imagine, will continue and keep going. But you're right, it is really beneficial. Logistically, it can be quite difficult to get teams of staff together, but it is very beneficial when they do have that time to see what other people are doing in other schools, to take ideas on board in their own practice and to do that. But certainly that does happen across the Nairn schools quite regularly, as far as I'm aware.
Great to hear. On the literacy and numeracy, what changes have there been to try and raise that attainment? We've got kids going into secondary that still are going to struggle. They're going to struggle in exams and stuff, which is quite concerning.
So in terms of the primary data, we've got a local authority tracking and monitoring system now that we're using. And it's been really quite effective. The data that's on the report is the P1, 4 and 7 data, but obviously all children are assessed, and it's not just based on one assessment at one point in the year, it's continuous. So what we've asked our schools to do is to have regular meetings. Senior management have regular meetings with the class teachers, and they're actually looking right down to an individual child basis. So they're looking at the class, they're looking at if there's children in that class who are maybe not attaining as expected, or where we would want them to be, then they're looking at what interventions and strategies are being deployed to fill that gap and to support that progress. And it's really looking at, if they're not at their age and stage, well, why not, and what are we doing about it? And then, as well as that, across the schools, we have our collaborative lead officers as part of our collaborative improvement framework, whereby the collaborative lead officer is in on a regular basis. For example, at Rosebank, you know, from our last meeting with the head teacher, and Fiona Jameson was there, that she's in regularly. They have meetings. Lisa then goes on and has the meetings with the staff, and that happens across all of our schools. So we're really looking at a real focus on the data, what we're needing to be doing to kind of fill any gaps, and how we can support the children that need extra interventions and what those are going to look like. And that's also something that the bit we just talked about, where staff are sharing those collegiate sessions where they're looking at how they deliver learning and teaching, that all helps to improve attainment and support those children that need the interventions as well. For example, one of our schools this week, the collaborative lead team are going in to do some moderation sessions with them, and we're hoping that will then have a positive impact on the data as well. We are, as part of our improvement framework, we kind of RAG our schools, so they're universal, focused and intensive support. So there's 3 different sort of levels of support, and it just means, so if they're on intensive, they have more regular visits with the collaborative lead officers. Okay. I would go in once a term as well for an update and a review with the collaborative lead officer and the head teacher. So we're looking at that, and each of our schools will be rated differently depending on the needs. But if we're seeing that data is not improving in a school, then we would possibly move them onto that intensive support so that they're getting more regular time with the collaborative lead officers as well. In terms of just going to the attendance question, yeah, I've just seen the article in the PNG about 20 minutes ago, so there will probably be, I think we're collating a response for that. But in terms of what we do in the area, we have updated our attendance policy in the council. This has been shared with all our schools, and the education support officers in my area team, when they go out to meet with the head teachers on their regular visits, attendance is always on the agenda for discussion. They monitor the attendance data, which I can give to you. I wrote it down this morning when I saw the article. So we would then be supporting the school, again, looking at how they can improve attendance generally, looking at what the reasons are, but also looking more closely at any individuals where it might be particularly low, and there's a process to follow for that as well, and how we support them. So yeah, Nairn Academy is currently 86%, Cawdor Alderney at 94%, Millbanks at 91%, and Rosebanks at 93%. So where we see a dip, again, that's where we would put in more intensive support. But that, with the education officers, that's always on the agenda for their school visits. And as I say, the attendance policy was updated, and there's a focus on trying to improve the attendance, but also find out what the reasons are for the absences as well.
Okay, yeah, it's a big concern about the academy when these are kids sitting exams at exam level, and I see the statistics for the positive destinations. Really great work when you have these careers fairs going on in the school with local businesses, and virtually every child is going on to somewhere, but the engagement and employment is really low. I would quite like to know what kind of courses they're going on to. Are they doing courses because they didn't pass something at school level, or is it university courses? You know, is it HND, HNC, degree courses? That would be quite nice to see what kind of destination that they're choosing that way as well.
Yeah, and that's something I think would be really good if we were to get Mrs. McDonald to one of your ward meetings, as we said, you know, like we did with Rosebank, to come in and she can give you the level of detail around that. But no, the positive destination data is really good for the academy, and it is important. You know, we're obviously in the exam period just now, and the results come in, and we're looking at, you know, the kind of 5 hires and so on. But it's also really important to look at all the other qualifications, and there are so many now that are available to young people, because not everyone is going to achieve 5 hires. So it's about making sure that there's something there as they're part of their curriculum offer, and they've got a real breadth and depth to that, so that everyone can access qualifications and go on to a positive destination. That's really the most important data, I feel, is making sure that they've all got a positive destination. Because it's not always about university or college. It's about, you know, they go into employment, or there's so many apprenticeships. There's a lot available to them now.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jarvie. I've got 3 points, Fiona. As following on from what Councillor Jarvie said and the conversations we've had, I think it's a good idea to come into our ward meetings quarterly.
Absolutely.
To bring in. Now, we had Rosebank in, and Rosebank are having a challenging time, we'll say the least. It might be better to see, maybe get Cawdor in next to see what they're doing right, and at the top end of the scale, and I'll credit them for doing so well. So maybe, Mark, if we can liaise with that, and if we can get somebody from Cawdor, that would be beneficial. 2 other points, which I think are very important. If you look on table 6, now you've got a phrase here, and it's under 7 as well. C represents small numbers that are suppressed to maintain confidentiality. Is there any real need for this? Because at the end of the day, numbers are numbers. There's, you know, that's confidentiality maintained. Just because you know a number, it's when you see, you know, that it's confidentiality. I don't think it applies in this case. It shouldn't. So I'd like to see numbers when we get this report again.
So
You know,
all the numbers are there for these schools. What that refers to is where we might have a very small rural school with just a few children in it, And then you would be able to possibly identify a child. So you might have a school where there's only one primary 4 pupil, or
Aye,
a
but
couple of primary 7s.
This is referring to Millbank and Rosebank, and you know, so
It's
I don't think-
referring to all the primaries. We do that. That's there, but there's no. It doesn't apply in these schools. It's just this is the standard form of the report that's used for all of our schools. So
Okay.
yeah, so there is no C for these schools because obviously the numbers are bigger. But we wouldn't. Where we've got smaller schools, you could identify individual pupils. So you have to be careful that we
Right.
don't do that. So you might
Well,
have
I was
2 pupils
looking
in P4.
Table
at, I was
6.
looking in table 6. If you look
Oh,
in table
apologies.
in
I'm looking
table
at table
6.
7. Sorry.
Okay, sorry, in table 6, the reference to C was in table 7, but it actually refers to the table in
Sorry, I
6.
see that now. Yeah.
So we've got Millbank and Rosebank, which would be reasonable numbers. Certainly they'd be bigger than Alderna Codder, I would think. And they've got their figures in, so it would be, how shall we say, only but fair, encouraging, or to complete the report, the integrity of the report, if we had those numbers coming in. So if you
Okay,
can
I
look to
will
that
check
for the
that with the
next.
data team. Yep.
And then the second thing, it's all very well, positive destinations and various things. I would have a degree of scepticism around anything during the COVID period, the accuracy of reporting there. But I would prefer to have seen, do we do any external comparisons with the likes of the PISA rankings? Because it's all very well this year, but there is an element, dare I say, of marking your own homework, which is never a good idea. Appealing it would have been to myself, but I always think external comparison is much better. So where do we stand with using PISA rankings, or where are we with that?
We don't use those in terms of reporting this. The virtual comparator is our external comparator. So the virtual comparator is something that's used all across Scotland, and you're given similar sized schools, similar sort of catchments, similar areas, and that's the one that we would be. You've got the virtual comparator. We would also have the Highland average as well, the Highland data.
Right.
So the
But
virtual comparator is that's all the other schools in Scotland that we're being compared to.
That does it, but I get that, but you know where I'm coming up from this. Unless there's external comparisons out with Scotland, you're just going to see, you could ultimately end up being the tallest dwarf, if you're with me. So unless you're making these comparisons with other, even in the UK, would be interesting to see where we are as in Scotland. But however, we can only deal with what's in front of us, and there's a lot of detail there, so thank you for that. So unless there's any other questions, Fiona, thank you for that. Has anybody got anything else to say? No. Okay, this supports for
just a wee bit. I note the figures are sort of about 1 to 2 years in the past, really. Are they keeping up with are they interpreted and improving on what we've done over the last few years? So I noticed 1 or 2 of the numeracies were down about average or just below average.
Yeah, so you've got there the most recent data is obviously 22-23. Schools are working on their data obviously for 23-24 just now, and then I think it goes back 2 years, so you've got 3 years there to track back. Would you be asking for further back, or?
No. Just how as long as we're picking up and improving, trying to improve on what we have. That's basically what I'm looking for. Yeah.
And certainly in terms of looking at sort of section 7, where we've got the primary attainment there, and this is one of the questions actually that following on from our meeting with Rosebank parents have been asking about there too. Their data has gone up, and I think because we've had that real focus on our primaries, but drilling down into the data, looking at what it means, and having that, given that priority, we have seen an improvement. And where we would have any concerns if we were below the national average or below the Highland average, that's where we would be looking to put a school onto that intensive support that I was talking about, where the collaborative leads go in and do specific training, and they work with the head teachers and with staff around being able to use the data and what it means, and how they can implement strategies in the classroom to make improvements.
Okay.
So that you've got a national, there isn't a virtual comparator for Highland. You get the national average, and then you get the Highland average, and then we compare our schools to those.
Okay, thank you.
That's fine, thank you. Well, we're asked to scrutinise, as previously with us to scrutinise and note the contents of this report. So noted. Okay, Fiona,
Councillor
once
Jarvie's
again.
trying to attract
Oh,
attention.
Councillor Jarvie, my
Sorry.
apologies.
Just one more request, sorry, just a wee thing popped in my head. It would be handy to have alongside a report like this also something on the staff absence and recruitment, because that can have a big impact on how schools do. You know, everyone has to pick up the slack. If you can't fill a role, you know, it's that's a hard challenge. So that would be good to have as part of the picture.
Yeah, I think there's something coming to
the
Education
support.
Committee on that. And in terms of staffing, we're currently going through our staffing allocation process now. So that's obviously based on the school role. So we ask our head teachers to submit that in February. We do it again in May. We do it again in August for any changes over the summer. And then our classes are allocated and finalised then. But you're right, it can be very challenging to get backfill and to get cover. And our head teachers and our staff in our schools do a great job in managing that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's just
Okay.
part of the picture. We're reflecting these other statistics. Be nice to have the local picture on that. Okay, for next
Okay.
time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jarvie. And Fiona, as always, thank you. Much
you.
appreciated. Okay, so we've noted that report. We'll go on to the last report, which is the ward discretionary budget, and I'll open that up for comment. Has anybody got anything to say on the ward discretionary budget? I would just put in a little bit of clarification and to say that the Nairnshire Committee newspaper was awarded £3,000. As I'm the co-chair of that organisation, I took no part in the discussion or the awarding of the funds, just for clarification. So unless there's any other comments, we'll just note. Anybody wish to make any other comments?
Okay, that should maybe be noted as a transparency statement in the minutes. Yes, I think so. No, just great to support our local groups.
Yep.
Onward and upward.
An interesting point of a bit of historical perspective, Councillor Jarvie, is when I first came in 2012, we'd somewhere in the region of 40,000 as an annual ward discretionary budget. We're now down to 14,000. So, and once you throw in inflation, it's not an awful lot. So I think we do a lot, and I appreciate your pulling me up there about transparency. It didn't dawn on me, but if Lorraine's okay, we could put that in as transparency at the beginning. My apologies for that. Right, so unless there's no other comments, is there any other comments anybody wishes to make? No? Okay.
No.
So we've noted that, and then we'll move on to the minutes. These are circulated, the minutes of the Nairnshire Committee, 22nd of January and the 4th of March, which were approved. So just noting.
Fine.
Okay, that's great. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you guys.
great.
That's much appreciated. And we'll hold on. We'll switch off the meeting. I'm not sure.